record button. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the Enriched Life Experiment podcast. I've done a few podcasts. I've got to remember that name. And with me today, I have Michele. And Michele was an ex-client of mine. She's in my community, and I'm just going to let her introduce herself. So, Michele, kick it off. Like, why me? Why now? Why here?
Ooh, good questions. Thank you for putting that in for us to start. Uh, why why are we here today? We had been speaking within the community. The topics that we talk about in the community are so juicy. I love it. And it gets right to the point of what's going on with us as individuals and us as a collective. We're all riding the same waves. So it's interesting how these topics come up, and it's always like something that's echoed in my own life, or something that I've contemplated recently. Sometimes even the same day of something will pop up and like, oh, I haven't thought about that, and then sure enough, it comes up during our call. So astonishing to me how that happens, but also not, because again, we're riding this collective wave together. So why you and why us? Yeah, we started working together earlier this year because I was going through a really painful transition in my life, breakup, also the pending uh, empty nester that just happened to my daughter is left for college, and also like big shifts in my life in terms of like my relationship to work and expressing myself and money. So the biggies, we covered all of the biggies together, and continue to do so. So I'm so grateful for the space that you hold, and also like, again, how tapped in you are to the collective energies and how you bring that into, the micro and the macro all like together. And I feel like that's an inquiry that I've been in for a lot of my life. So I came into my spirituality and like my understanding of the world really through the body. Like ever since I was young, I could feel things through my body and have this like sense of embodiment that was like very natural to me. And then that parlayed into a very natural expression of becoming a physical therapist. And I knew from a very young age, like I can remember back to when I was like 8 or 9, knowing that I want to do something hands-on, whether to be a chiropractor or physical therapist. So sure enough, I did that. And I have been doing that for the past 25 years. And I went into it primarily to work with children, actually, because that's a subject. And also, I believe that it's also a way for me to have transcended and worked through a lot of my own childhood, to be able to hold space for parents to be happy and healthy and stewards of their children's lives, right? And so even though I go into their lives as a physical therapist, working in like the gross motor context, like very often I end up supporting them in much deeper ways. So so the body has been an important part of my like kind of like understanding of the world and myself and others. So that's kind of like where I'm at in the world. And then I just finished writing a book with a co-author, a friend of mine, which is about relationships, which is very interesting that how that came about as well, given my history, and also like the way that we work through things by teaching, by holding space for others. So it's just been this like deeply accelerated spiritual journey, especially this past year, and you have been a huge part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when is your book coming out, or is it out, or?
It's not out yet. We're actually in the midst of doing a launch campaign for it, but we've been picked up by a publisher, and it's potentially we could be picked up by a larger one. It's kind of like out for bidding at the moment, and it's looking pretty good for that. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited, and yeah, it's been working me too to have a co-creative process with also a male co-author. So we really were like playing in the fields of polarity and masculine feminine dynamics, even in the co-creation of this book, it's called Lasting. The 11 illuminations and the essential questions for a committed evolutionary partnership.
Oh, wow. That
So
sounds hot. That sounds great. That sounds really,
yeah,
really awesome.
I'm super excited. Yeah. So
Awesome. So then doubling back
yeah.
to relationships and what for me, for those listening, like I completely forgot what this podcast was going to be about. And Michele reminded me it's about transactions, like transactions in relationships and transactional relationships. And well, before I hit the record button, I actually started going into a story about the transactional relationship. I'll just speak to it and my mixed past about relationships and transactional relationships. I was in the shower, and a lot of my epiphanies come through the shower. I'm in the water by myself. There's something about the water and just not having to think about work, but work inevitably just pops up. And it took me back into a memory of one of my exes who came out from New York. And she was on a holiday visa, and we wanted to transition her onto a partner visa. Like I could see myself spending my life with this woman. And as the relationship progressed, she came out with some savings and she wanted to find some work here in Australia. And she couldn't find any work here. And then I was a little bit annoyed by that because she didn't want to learn how to use the public transport system, blah, 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 blah. But in that, I really just wanted her to be here. And I said to her, look, I'll just pay for whatever it is that you want to pay until you find your feet and you do find the courage eventually to go and find the work. What happened was I kept keeping tallies, an internal ledger of how much she was spending that I was paying for. And this was starting to eat me up. Like intellectually, I'm like, I love this woman. Like, why am I keeping this ledger? Why am I letting this resentment like to eat away at the foundation of our relationship? And this is before I did all the deep work that I've done now. But what happened was the relationship ended up collapsing and she went back into New York. The relationship dissolved into nothing from there. But since then, I've had multiples of relationships where I would keep a ledger of what am I doing? What's she doing? What am I doing? And then realizing that to discover what devotion meant for me, actually, a gene key really helped me with this, gene key 29. But to unravel like my resentment towards my mum and my resentment towards my dad and the feminine, and then that being able to see that women bring something more to the table than just an earning, like money on the table or something else. And this entitlement that I had came from an early, like at the mother wound injury, if you want to give a larger umbrella to it. But it wasn't until I looked at that till someone like Cassie came into my life when she had no idea she wanted to be a full-time mum, but I had the space in me to honor that. I was like, yeah, great. You be a full-time mum. I'll happily and gladly and devotedly provide for whatever it is that you want in that bandwidth to live out that life stream. So that's the story that came up for me. But there was some grief around my ex, around I was such an asshole. I was such a belligerent, conniving, narcissistic asshole to her. And I didn't let her really feel her feelings or be the man that she actually needed me to be, and not pining over the relationship. But it could have had a different trajectory, right? If I did the work that I did now, but that's not how life goes. So that's my piece of the transactional side of things. Like, Michele, what's been your journey, or what insights, or what shows up for you when we start talking about the transactional aspect of relationships?
Yeah, well, first of all, like, thank you. One of the things I love about you is that you are so honest and real about your journey and, the mistakes or like the learnings that you've had, right? Like you are so transparent about that. So I really appreciate that. So for me, I would say that both of my major relationships in my life have fallen apart over two things: money and sex. So, and yeah, and they're actually really interrelated. Um, and the second relationship breakup, I was astonished and like actually in the, surprised to when I was told that I had cost him a certain amount of money and he gave me a lump sum amount of, because he had been keeping that ledger, just like you said, right? And I had no idea that he was doing that. And that was such a painful moment of being told like that I was so expensive and that I cost him this much money. Like, I was just astounded that like somebody could even do that. And then I went into this like guilt and shame spiral over like, do I owe him that money? Like, is this like a clean like break in terms of that aspect? And it was really like I went through a couple of months of just like contemplating that aspect of it. And I would hear his voice in my head, like, you're so expensive, you're so expensive. And now, you know, I have a different perspective of that. Like, I am expensive, like, and owning that. And it has nothing to do with money. That it's, you know, the cost is of mutually our own ideas about ourselves and each other and what relationships are. It's going to cost. There's a cost to that. And at the same time, like really thinking more about the spiritual aspect of relationships and how like you actually even gave voice to this particular concept that I really want to like drill down and like think about and talk about and contemplate and discuss is you said, what do you bring to the table? Or what does the woman bring to the table? Or what do we each bring to the table? And that is such a common term that's used in relationships, right? What do you bring to the table? And I feel like that's such a distortion of a concept of, and I have been calling it, what do we bring to the altar? There is this plane that happens between two hearts. This is the way I like see it in my mind. There's a plane that is between two hearts. It could look like a table. Maybe it is a table. And it is about what do we place on that from our spirits and our hearts. It's not, I come with a salary of this much and I come with debt of this much. And I have aspirations that are going to cost this much. It has nothing to do with money. So yeah, I feel like it's just a distortion of like what is actually between two people and what we can place there and take off as well. Sometimes we'll place something on there and say, that's not really something that is meant for you and I. And that's okay. Right. And so, and the dynamic nature of that. So yeah, so that's really like where I go when I like think about this topic is what do we bring to the altar?
Yeah, I love that because the altar is sacred, right? And if you do
Yeah.
want a conscious relationship, or you're taking the relationship further than the stereotypical like marriage, have kids, retire, investment property, blah 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 blah. You're actually doing the deep work of transmuting multi-generational injuries. You're wanting to pass on a different kind of legacy, not just a financial legacy, but actually something that's worth like the soul, and the soul being something that's intangible and is felt. It's a felt sense of, well, how can I honor this person's soul? How can I honor this person's being? And what I'm hearing there in the altar space and the sacredness of it is when you remove the materialistic component from a lot of relationship negotiations, like what's really at the core. Because in the Hollywood dynamics and even in some spiritual circle dynamics, there can be, well, what's the thing that we can put a label on that makes that person valuable to me, whether it's exposure, whether it's reputation, whether it's, oh, they run a drum circle and I want to be around that kind of energy, so I can feel like just by being there's still something else that's tangible in that negotiation. What I'm hearing is there's whatever goes on the altar is something much more. And the first thing that I saw was vision. Like the image that I see on this altar is like a snowball, the snowball of a vision of like, what is this? What does this relationship look like? And what's inside this snowball of this vision of the relationship? And I know for me, with my relationship with Cass, it's the vision is what helped both of us. I mean, I may have spoken about this in previous podcasts or conversations with you potentially. Cassie designed a partner when she was sitting ayahuasca in Peru. Like she did her yoga training over there, this thing, and she was flicking through it one day and she saw the writing in there and she's like, oh my God, John, this is you. Like, this is you that I've created here. And so it's in that vision of what we want. Like, what does a partner look like? What is the energy of the person that we want to look like? What is the vision? Where are we going? What's the divine mother and the great mother's wisdom for us as individuals that we can unite in union and create something together? Like with that book that you're writing, it's a co-creation, right? It's co-creation feels very different to like going it on your own. And there's a chemistry in co-creation. So when our children become part of that co-creation, or family, extended family members, you're bringing something else to the altar, to create something that I think has longevity beyond what the materialistic world has seen thus far. And I think that's what we're seeing in this next transition, this next epoch, is something that's immaterial that we're seeing in relationships, like this connection, this honesty, that being able to deeply connect and allow a relationship to evolve as it needs to, whatever that looks like. Because like when you're saying before, when something gets put on the altar and then you go, oh, wait a minute, actually, I don't want that anymore. Or maybe I want something else. Or maybe I just don't want that at all on there. And I think if you're committed to a relationship that's got growth in it, that's a natural negotiation that happens every other week to every other year to every other decade, where it's you're always checking in. Well, is this relationship aligned? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And even if the vision is aligned, sometimes the vision requires you to go your own separate ways because the visions can change as a relationship progresses. So I think the fascination with a relationship, the only relationship is one that lasts forever, and then depth versus integrity, truth, and honesty, I think is what's actually on the table right now, on the altar right now. I mean, what do you hear in that, Michele?
I mean, first of all, you outlined like already like more than half of the illuminations that we have. So it's so in the field. It's so in the field. And so it's exciting to me to hear you like echoing this back because I'm like, I feel this readiness of like the world is ready for this book and these conversations. That's what it's about. Because this book really like at its core is a book about communication and like not just the mechanics of it, it's the deeper like understandings and the attitude as to how we can approach these conversations with curiosity and playfulness, and that level of like it's like, hey, we're in discovery mode here. Right. So, and that's very different from this is what I have to offer and what do you have to offer. So transactionality has kind of infused relationships up until then. And it makes sense, right? Like we're at this phase where we're transcending and including this part from before where we were living lives where we needed to think about and like that survival. And that was a smart thing to do. So I'm not like discounting or like saying
Yeah.
that was wrong at the time. It made sense. And we are like literally in this swing phase from that to something different, something new. And we are all co-creating this as we speak, I feel, as we're having these conversations, as this is getting out into the collective consciousness, we're having more and more of these conversations together, because it really is like doing it together. It's not just all of us going off into our little, meditation mats and contemplating them on our own. Like this is alive right now. I can feel it. Like I feel this energy of co-creation with you right now in this moment. And that's so exciting. I love this. I love these moments. And so we're moving towards like, what are the words? Like, because words matter, right? So transactionality, that brings in a fiscal business type mindset to the whole like feeling around relationships. So I'd love to riff on like finding some other words possibly that it will bring in more of the element that we're talking about. Like I've already been thinking more about something like mutuality.
Mm.
Reciprocity is a beautiful one that doesn't quite have, it still has this sense of like an exchange for sure, but to me personally, it's not this like tit for tat thing. It feels like we all put into this more general pool. And I know we
Mm.
were talking about debt during, actually, that's the conversation that we were having in your community that is the springboard for this particular conversation. We're talking about how debt is like, it's like everyone's debt is, we're all kind of in the mix with it all, right? So how do we bring a little bit more of that collectivity, universality to this concept? I'm curious what we can
Mm.
co-create in this space right now.
Yeah, thank you. No, I love that. I love that because I totally agree. Language is super important, and it comes with a charge. So it's almost like straight away, there's nothing in English that really stands out to me, and it could
Mm,
be in some other vernacular. I mean, English is
yeah,
so freaking limited in its
totally.
description of like the energetics. It's sterile for me. English is quite sterile. So having to
Mhm.
add verbs and adverbs into something to make it a bit more juicy is is where I've been. And what am I saying? Like devotion is the word that pops out, but I think even devotion is something else too. Like being able to have like a devotional connection. Like why do you give? Like what's
Yeah.
the source of your giving? And the image that pops up is the Betty, I can't remember her last name. Betty Crocker. The Betty wheel of consent. There's a consent, the wheel of consent.
Oh, Martin.
Oh, yes, Betty Martin. And what does it mean to give from a place of wanting to give, and then knowing when
Mhm.
you are overgiving and being able to say, "Hey, I've actually been overgiving this entire relationship, and I need to pull back and find my own boundaries."
Yeah.
Because in that exploration discovery phase, there is well, let's push this edge. Okay, that's too much of an edge. What do I need to bring it back to? Which is that's the merging pattern style and the five personality patterns. And in that, it's natural, it's normal. Like in order for to feel the juice that somebody else is giving you, whatever that juice is, whether it's attention or presence, or whether it's a gift, and the five love languages pop into my head. But even then, the love languages are limited too,
Mhm.
because there's a sometimes your survival pattern makes you bias towards particular love languages when you haven't really been able to open yourself to other ones that you might really enjoy, but because you didn't get that in childhood, you kind of write them off. But what I'm also hearing in this is the debt piece. Oh, and this collective debt. And I could even when I say the word debt, I can feel this like bonk, like this
Yeah,
thing
me too.
in my thymus, debt. Um, and how like fiscal debt and karmic debt or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
unconscious debt of that we're all moving through. And when you mentioned before about not wanting to write off where we've come from because it was about survival, it's like, yeah, this reminds me of the gene key that we did recently about grafting. And like you graft the old root stock with the new thing that we want to put on there. So being able to graft what's worth preserving in the past and being able to bring it into the future, bring it into the present moment and align with, well, where are we at right now? What can we take from the past that did work and didn't work and just filter it out? Let's have an experiment. Like what's really going to work here? But doubling back to the debt piece, take a breath, John. It's this thing that we're all working through.
Mhm.
What worked in our parents' relationship that or what didn't work that we don't want to bring forward? What did work that we do want to bring forward? And I think those like conversation and communication is so important. Like for Cassie and I, we can get pretty complacent about how comfortable our relationship gets. And then we
Mhm.
have these climaxes of, oh shit, that came out of nowhere. So making sure that we're tending to the garden of conversation. We have our bi-weekly executive meetings where we talk about, well, what's in the way? What are you irritated about? What are you pissed off about? It doesn't mean either of us need to change. It just doesn't, well, I just want to be heard. Most people just want to be heard. And in that presence and in that groundedness, a transformation naturally happens. Of course, there can be self-destructive traits which need to be addressed as a priority, whether it's potentially alcoholism or some other kind of habit that's actually
Mhm.
damaging the relationship. But for the most part, those conversations are more about just steadying the ship. It's like, are we still on the same trajectory, the same compass? And every night, but we have a gratitude practice. So we're always speaking to what we're grateful for every day. So there's this bank of gratitude that works to weather the storm when we don't meet. We meet in halfway conversation. For example, I might be getting ready to do a podcast or get ready for a client, and Cassie will ask me a question that I'm not ready for, and I can feel the irritation and the derailing of in my preparation. So for us having a conversation around, well, like, don't ask me questions about that when I'm preparing to go into battle or preparing to go do something else, because that's not for now. I understand you have an issue. Let's raise it in this container over here, where we have like the metaphorical boxing ring, where we go to town and just do whatever needs to happen, you know. And I think when you learn how to fight all in, and you have that vision of the relationship, the depth of the connection so much better. Like, I know for me personally, like, I've tried the nonviolent communication tack. I've tried the landmark, trying to reframe and cognitively reframe what I'm trying to say. What works better for me is just to go all in. I was like, hey, I'm fucking pissed off about this. I hate it when you do this. Like, it drives me fucking bonkers. And then she's exactly the same. Like, John, I just feel like you don't fucking listen to me. Like, just being able to be yourself. Like, oh, Cass, I had no idea, because it lands in me. I can feel you. I can feel you now. Ah, I get it. That is so irritating. I can see why that would be so irritating for you. And so by having this is Gene Key 59, by having that intimacy and that honesty and that transparency, there's a depth of the connection that comes, because we all learn to be with our triggers. It's like, oh, that's my triggering. Ah, yeah. Yeah, it's me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry for swearing at you. Like, it's not a habit that I really want to do. And here I am. So yeah, I spoke a lot there, Michelle. I don't know what you heard in that.
But what I heard in that, especially when you were just brought up the trigger word, just recently I started to, because when I would even check in with myself, I was like, oh man, that triggered me. And words matter. We also just talked about that concept a couple of minutes ago. I've been switching it to calling it a divine awareness. And it's shifted everything for me. And it's such a simple concept of like, thank you. Thank you for illuminating what is, there's an impact. And, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, like, oh, when we're talking about the word debt, like you feel it in your thymus, right? Like that's pretty granular when you talk about like your awareness that you have of your body and like where things hit and land or bounce off of you, is really like masterful. And I feel like this is another part, like another layer of communication that's going to be happening more, is like this in real time, checking in with ourselves and then being able to articulate that with our communication partner, whoever that may be. And yeah, being able to say like, oh man, like I just feel that in my liver right now. Like, ugh, like, let me go just breathe that through for a moment. And like tracking and being so aware, I feel like even that process alone is going to shift relationships, because we're just unconsciously like just bouncing off of each other right now. And in this way that's like, we're just like these ping pong balls, or what's the other game?
Uh,
Yeah, electronic game with
the paddles, the
it's well, it'll come to me anyway. Yeah, so like we're just kind of like each other, instead of like taking those moments to be like, oh yeah, like, oof, my heart, or oof, like, and this is what it feels like. I feel like there's a vice around my middle, and that is, I feel, the doorway to a level of understanding. This is not just knowing, this is understanding, that is so key and so vital. And I know I've been missing that in my life. And so this newfound awareness, and then also being able to articulate it in real time, and honestly, is just coming online. I know a lot of our work together has helped so much with the, the armoring, de-armoring work, and like just becoming aware of patterns, and with such deep compassion for like where we've all been, like what we've all been through, right? So meeting myself there, and including myself in that, because I think that was a piece that I was really missing, was I wasn't including myself in the compassion that I can show for others. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. But getting back to pinball, that's the game. Yeah. Yeah, when we're pinging off of each other, and when you can have these conversations where we're talking about, like our body-based responses, reactions, cues even, I think that's going to just add to so much more depth and intimacy. So I'm
Yeah, totally.
excited. New
Yeah,
phase.
yeah, me too. Yeah, it's very excited. This connection to the body, and I love the divine awareness, because I can hear the word trigger. It feels like it's an archaic. Like it feels laden with all this like psychiatric and psychological sterility. But then the divine awareness, I can hear that there's such a loosening and grace to that word. And so I was like, oh yeah, thank you. I can feel that going through me right now. That landed. I've got it. I can feel it.
Yay. Where did it land?
Where did it land? Oh, I can feel it. Jaw, then down to the arm. It's like, yeah, I got that. What is that? Oh man, that's shame. That's embarrassment. Oh, I'm embarrassed. Yeah, actually, I feel like I let you down. Yeah, yeah, I can feel that. Yeah. What else do you say that was really potent? Oh,
And trigger, like when I think of the word trigger, like the visual that comes to me is like a gun. So somebody's gonna get shot.
yeah, right, right,
Right. So
right.
like those, again, like those things matter. Like we were talking about how the English language is rife with these kind of like weird associations, as well as like the inability to really capture the true to the totality sometimes of certain concepts. That's why like we haven't yet arrived at, and it may be in another language. I'm
I
so curious what emerges
Yeah.
uh,
Like I think it's in your native tongue.
in Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Japanese got such a rich language compared to
Yeah,
English.
it's so interesting. Like when I talk to people about certain, because there are like a couple of words right now, like the kintsugi, for instance, like the concept of putting a broken piece of pottery back together with gold. There's so many nuances to that concept, even like that are like not even talked about,
Right.
or in those memes, it doesn't quite capture everything. So so it's so interesting when somebody asks me about a Japanese word, and like that conversation tends to be quite long because and layered,
Yeah,
because it's like, well, there's this aspect of it, and then, oh yeah, there's this too. So
which speaks to
uh,
relationships, right? It speaks to
right.
that vitality,
Yeah.
the depth of, because if you're looking at, if you the image that just popped up then was a tree root, right? And
Mm.
the you can't just label one root a root, because there's so many different styles of roots that go down, and it's like, I know there's a temptation to want to shortcut, and the doubling back to having to find a reason for things. It's like the mind
Mm.
just wants that shortcut. It's like, just give me the little bit, and just give me the little one, so the little meme of that really complex other language, that I can strip it of all of its strip it of all of its like depth and its history and its etymology, so I can put it in a meme, so I can feel better about whatever that is, right? So in the context of relationships, the depth, and it takes time. Like it takes
Yeah.
time. And what I see in the Japanese culture is there's more time. There's more energy, there's more space, there's more deliberateness. That's what I see anyway. When I look at English, I see this colonial, like, got to get it done, like no
Yeah.
time, like I see like a puckered ass, like just this, I'm tight, like I'm rigid, and I got to get from A to B, no time for a conversation. It's like, here's your cup of tea, here's your coffee, here's the off to work, back home in bed, repeat the same thing. Because I with the gene keys and the tea, the concept of tea and that whole relationship with time and presence from the five personality patterns, and presence of like when you have that divine awareness, it can pull you out of presence. So in that, knowing that there's something else that's here, that I think you're on the mountain here, Michele. I think there's something here that's going to take time. It's not going to be this like snapshot, like 30-second reel thing. It's going to be like this depth that's going to bring a real depth of flavor to this word that you want to encapsulate in that relationship mechanism. I don't know, that's what I say. That's what I see. I don't know about you.
Well, I'm excited for the discovery of that. Yeah. It's so interesting too. Like one of the reasons why I was so drawn to working with you is because of your orientation towards the gene keys. And I like when I started to do like delve into that, and it's been a while, it's been probably 10 years or something like that, where like I've been dabbling in it. And then of course, like working with you, it was a huge acceleration into it because of your understanding. I don't know how you do it. You're just like, I was like, that's Gene Key 59. And you like know the, you know, the shadow, the gifts in the city, like immediately. I'm like, wow, how does he do that? But anyway, because of, I believe, who it came through, Richard is such a poet and a mystic. So it drew that, like that essence from me as well. Like I recognized that. So I feel like the gene keys have also like kind of exploded the awareness around them, and like more and more people are talking about that. And they're even like just the programs that they're offering and things like that too is like really kind of like much more broad and out there. So which I'm super happy about. So I do feel like that there's a, like, that's part of like the leading edge of the wave too,
Yeah.
of what's happening, of this, of contemplation.
Yeah, thank you. I actually
Yeah.
did a reading today for someone, one of my Gene Key takeaways. And this guy had the 55 and the 59 in his
Mm.
like straight away. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh wow, bro, like the 55 and the 59, it's ripe right now. Like that's
Yeah.
like bring that bad boy out. Like whatever you've been feeling in victimhood or freedom or the dishonesty in relationships, and you want to get to that honesty and transparency, like that's the grind work right now in relationships is, well, where are you being dishonest? Like where are you being dishonest in like the physical intimacy that you want,
Mhm.
the transparency that you want, the devotion that you want, and then where are you being a victim in all of that? Because they double bind. Where I don't want to say this because I don't want to walk on eggshells, or I don't want to say this because of this. Like it's all going to bring it to the surface. Like either it's for you or it's not for you. And I think the pivot point can be, well, what am I going to do? Like, you know, this person, we've got assets together, or we've got children together. And it's like, yeah, what are you going to do? Like, put the message out. Ask for some more divine awareness about what, because the divine awareness will push you in the direction that you need to go. It's like, I keep getting this divine awareness. I can't control it anymore. I can't intellectualize it anymore. My old techniques of bypassing are not working anymore. It's like, yeah, that's where we're going. You're not going to be able to bypass it anymore. It's going to be in your face. And for me, like I love that space because I can be with the grief. I'm like, John,
Ugh.
I'm not in control of my life. It's like, yeah, thank you. I can hear that. I'm with you.
Yeah, like you're
Yeah.
right on the edge. Yeah.
So, Michele, when you were speaking before, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
So, what is a lover to you?
Oh, you know, I had the 25th Jinky multiple times in um my hologenic profile, which is universal love. So a lover is, I love this question. And I'm loving like just being sitting in like the inquiry of the languaging around my answer. To me, a lover is someone who shows their heart to the other. So when you show your heart to me, you're my lover.
Thank you. I can see that softening happening right there. Yeah. When you were speaking, I'm like, I need to ask her what a lover is for her. Just out of the blue. I need to ask what's a lover for her. Because that's what because you've got that medicine, Michele. And I think like I think and I see that there's a whole portion of humanity that's lost and forgotten what that energy is that you're carrying in that when you feel that lover, that energy, like what's there. And they need to be remembered. Well, they can choose to be remembered. They can have a choice to remember what that is. Um, I think there's a real opportunity to blossom and remember that underneath the facade and the intellectualization and the mechanics of a relationship, like under the transactional component of a relationship, there's actually this deep longing
Oh,
to
yeah.
to be in this lover energy, and it'll come and it'll go. But knowing that that's there and that it returns us to something sacred, like we put ourselves on the altar when that
Mm.
energy is being exposed. But I think a lot of the population just wants to rekindle, and it's alive. Like we just created it then, and there'll be more. The wave is coming. That tsunami,
It's coming.
it's
And when
coming.
you just called it, you just called it. So thank you for calling it. And also like when you said that when we place ourselves on the altar, like those words, I felt that like deep, 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 like in the middle of my middle in my solar plexus, and this like wave just like went through my heart and like out. So thank you for that. Like, no, that's really beautiful.
My pleasure. Again, co-creation, right? It's so
Yeah, for
important.
sure. Yeah. And thank you for your reflection as well. Thank you. I really like honor the way that you see people. And yeah, when you just saw me like that and reflected that back to me, it really beautiful. And you've seen me snot nose crying.
Yeah, being
I mean,
human. I've seen you being human, you
yeah.
know, like that the innocence, all of it, the honesty, the rawness. And and I think there's like from like English in particular, and then religion that gets overlaid over the top of that, and
Oh
all
yeah.
this additional things where you're not allowed to be human. It's like, no, all I am is human. It's like this is like my whole experience is a human one. So when you find those people that can allow you to be yourself, like it really does trigger this remembering of, oh, wait a minute, I'm allowed to be this. I'm allowed to be, and that makes me expensive
Yeah.
because I'm a diamond. I'm more than a diamond, right? There's something that's here. I'm expensive in the way that it costs you access to be with this. And the cost is, can you show me your heart? Right?
Right.
Can you be with all of me? Right? The whole spectrum of who I am. And the heart's got the containment for that. The mind doesn't. The mind has got no idea. The mind's trying to the mind is still trying to understand what women is, what a woman is, right? But the heart knows, the heart sees from a distance, and it feels and it communicates across the globe, across Zoom, right? So yeah, I'm so grateful for this conversation, Michele. I'm so great. Like
Ah,
when I
yeah.
offered it, it's like, Let's do a podcast on this. Okay, great. Let's just do it. It's like it's just so natural and oh yeah.
Yeah. And other than remembering the topic that was the one that came up that you were like, hey, let's do a podcast on that. Like I had zero. I went into this with this, you said the word innocence before, but it really felt like that. I'm like, there's an emergent field that's going to be created and I am here for it. So I think that's part of
Mm,
being a lover too, isn't it? It's like
it is.
creating the field together.
It is. It totally is. And doubling back to the innocence, like the gene key 3 there, through the eyes of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And like with my son Luca, like he's learning his anatomy now. Like he's learning
Hmm.
his parts of his body. He's got a penis now. It's like, oh, what's this thing? Like, what's this? How does
Awesome.
this work? It's awesome. It's like, oh wow, I can touch it and I can feel good and I can pee through it too. And we're also taking him out of nappies now. So
Mhm.
before he couldn't see himself pee, but now he's like, oh, pee, pee. Like he'll go out to the garden and pee, or the bath and pee. Or he's learning how to potty train himself now. But there's this innocence in the exploration, and as soon as I try and intellectualize it or apply something to it, I'm applying a morality to it, and I can feel that morality that came from my parents' programming of like, you shouldn't be touching your genitals, you shouldn't be doing this, can't do that in public. But now when I remove the morality from it and apply this innocence of the child, it's like, yeah, he's just learning how to human. He's
Yeah.
just learning how to human, and there'll be a natural progression to know when that's socially acceptable and when that's not. Like at the beach, we let him run naked. But when he's
Mhm.
16, we might not let him do that or encourage him to do that, right? So so allowing this natural, because I think it's built into the DNA to do this. Just, oh, I don't need to run around naked anymore. I actually like being in my underpants. Like I can reserve that because it's sacred, right? The flavor of the sacredness changes, I think, as you spiritually and emotionally mature.
Yeah, so do you feel like just tapping into that innocence as well, like from a collective level, do you feel like there's this deep yearning that we're feeling to return to this innocence?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Particularly from the rigid, the puckered person who has to live their life, and allowing that 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 penetrating space of grace that allows for the discovery of the self again under the armoring is coming. It's here.
Mhm.
And now it's lapping at the shores of everybody. Some people are already in the deep end. Some people are dipping their toe in. Some people will never get in the water. But the innocence allows people to deal with the chaos of life. So for the person who is very defined and rigid, chaos is like their hell. So
Mhm.
a person can have a really organized external world, like they've got all their towels are lined up, all the kitchen's done the right way, they have all their clothes are folded in a particular way. But then internally, there can be this cyclone of emotions and feelings and thoughts. And then you can have the flip of that. I'm more the flip of that. My internal world is quite organized, and my
Mhm.
external world is quite chaotic. So Cassie and I work great in that opposite attract.
Yeah.
But in that, the innocence piece is, it helps you to be present in the chaos, because that's what I'm seeing is happening. Is we're seeing a spike in chaos, and I think it's going to spike even more in 2025,
Mhm.
where people who learn how to be in the eye of the storm or become the storm are the ones that are going to thrive in this next epoch, thrive in their relationships, thrive in business, thrive in every other area, because they know that there's something much larger than them that can guide them through the chaos, and that's the innocence of having those eyes of the child.
That's so beautiful. I'm here for it.
Me too. Me too. I'm so here for it. So here for it. Michele, is there anything else that you want to share, or?
I'm just feeling profoundly grateful for this conversation and yeah, just tapping into what's coming for all of us. There's more love coming.
So much more love. So much more love.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My pleasure. I'm going to hit stop on the record. I'll
Okay.
send you a link. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm going to use it for my own stuff too. And
Cool.
Michele, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
deeply honor and appreciate you, and the portals that you stepped through, the fires that you've walked through, the emotions that you've expressed, and your determination and persistence to not allow your previous family model to influence where you're moving forward. Like, it takes a hell of a lot of courage to put your marker in the ground, and also write a book too about relationships, right? It's a lot. So like, I'm deeply honored to know you and to share this life. Like, this is life, like vitality with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love investing in you. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here.
Oh, deep bow of gratitude. You too. Thank you.
All right, Madeline, I'm going to hit stop, and then
Okay.
we can wrap up off camera.